institutions working in the field of ICT from a regional perspective, and the private sector and independent consultant. Also, we have our online moderator, Ms. Loretta from CIDIG, who will take and follow the online session. I will start by presenting our first panelist, Ms. Nirvana Farag, Director General, International Cooperation Department, Egypt, IDSC. Ms. Farag has over 20 years of experience in the field of supporting the decision-making process in Egypt. She is currently the Director General of International Cooperation Department at the Egyptian Cabinet Information and Decision Center. Please, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Antoine. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Egyptian Cabinet Information and Decision Support Center, I would like to express my thanks to the organizers of the Internet Governance Forum for giving us the chance to organize our first workshop in this distinguished event. The IGF is considered one of the most notable, interactive and productive forum concerned with the integration of ICT technology and spreading connectivity in all sectors to provide prosperity, freedom, and social equity. We have chosen the topic of Internet of Things and its impacts on the decision-making process because the concept of Internet of Things became a very controversial topic and has a lot of implication on the decision-making process. There are several questions that we aspire to answer them today, including what are the challenges and barriers facing our digital future and its impact on the decision-making process, giving examples on how the IoT can impact decision makers, what are the roles of decision makers in developing IoT policies, how far IoT help advancing and sustaining improving standards of living of people, and how can smart solutions support all stakeholders in the decision-making process. Ladies and gentlemen, IoT is adding a dimension to the information revolution. The Internet of Things is an umbrella term which describes a multi-faced foundation for a range of applications and goals that are enabled through the connection of devices and objects and equipped with data capture and communication capacities. The connection of devices, physical objects, sensors, the physical world, appliances, endpoints, and others, they are all terms to describe what is obviously an essential part of a network of things. IoT devices will likely touch most aspects of our lives, including devices in our homes, workplace, schools, hospitals, and other public spaces. In simple words, IoT refers to the ability of everyday objects to connect to the internet and to send and receive data. Internet of Things enables a smarter bridging of digital, physical, and human spheres by adding these capacities in a secure way to a networked environment. IoT has lots of benefits which can help decision makers in adopting smarter and innovative policies and solutions and responding to various challenges. The interaction and communication with other machines and objects will generate huge volumes of data, and that data is processed into useful actions and can command and control things which will make people's life much easier and safer. If we start with the health sector, IoT benefit patients, families, and physicians alike. Hospitals should be using the Internet of Things in healthcare to keep the patients safe and healthy, and also keep track of the inventory. Connected medical devices can allow also patients with serious medical conditions to work with their physicians to manage their diseases. It also improves patients' experience with the services of hospitals and physicians. We can say the hospital staffing decisions will be based on facts, accurate data, and reliable indicators. If we focus on transportation sector and securing the roads, sensors on a car can notify drivers of dangerous road conditions, and software updates can occur wirelessly, obtaining the need for customers to visit the dealership. Whilst we address the impact of IoT on the industrial sector, we can consider it another industrial revolution. The automation industry is fortunate to have an expanding range of technologies available to solve problems, improve operations, and increase productivity. Governments, officials, lawyers, diplomats, and others who are involved in either providing public goods or presenting public stability are also concerned as internet technology develops very quickly, new services are introduced almost on a daily basis. The government of Egypt is paying a great attention to the growing industry of IoT and the integrating of the ICT into all public and private affairs alike, where the Egyptian Cabinet Information and Decision Support Center was one of the first organizations in Egypt that introduced ICT to the Egyptian community. IDSC plays the role of an incubator for ideas and policy initiatives that will be brought to maturity elsewhere, adopting the idea that public services should be ICT enabled so the businesses and citizens can interact with the public administration online. In this sense, IDSC has played a major role in providing government information online. The Egypt Information Highway project was launched by IDSC to build up homegrown content. Pilot websites also were launched for culture, tourism, health, education, environment, and public services and government administration. IDSC, where its main mission is to support senior decision-making with public policy support and contribute to decision-making process with evidence-based research options, relying on different research tools such as public opinion, media observatories, policy monitoring and evaluation, crisis and disaster and management, and risk reduction. IDSC has a record in the support of the Egyptian government through initiating several ICT creative and smart solutions. Let me share with you two major initiatives that were launched recently. E-Grievance Redress Mechanism in Government, GRM. This is an Egyptian governmental portal that facilitates the communication between the citizens and the decision makers about citizen complaints and problems and come up with effective solution as quickly as possible. In addition, it allows decision makers to have a database of citizens' complaints to be used in planning for development. IDSC also works on preparing reports and building indicators that monitor and analyze citizens' complaints. Also, establishing a decision support system where one of the latest systems, Egypt Development Map, using different geospatial systems to configure, display, and analyze all development projects in all governorates in Egypt in all socio-economic sectors. It has been noted that the IoT presents a variety of potential security risks that could be exploited to harm consumers by enabling unauthorized access and misuse of personal information, facilitating attacks on other systems, creating risks to personal safety. Also, privacy risks may flow from the collection of personal information, habits, locations, and physical conditions over time. In particular, some panelists note that companies might use this data to make credit, insurance, and employment decisions. In order to deal with such challenges, allow me to conclude my intervention with policy recommendations and remarks. As we can see that there are several challenges accompanied by the increasing usage of IoT, developers and specialists in IT industries are encouraged to innovate in developing security programs for IoT products and services, and it must be a fundamental priority to maintain overall user trust in this technology. IoT security is the collective responsibility of all who develop and use IoT devices. Participants in the IoT space should adopt a collaborative approach to security among its broad multi-stakeholder community by assuming responsibility, sharing best practices and lessons learned, encouraging security dialogue and emphasizing the development of flexible, shared security solutions that can adapt and evolve as threats change over time. IoT system designers also should consider the full life cycle of the IoT system to ensure obsolete devices don't pose security risks and are compatible with responsible environmental stewardship. Secondly, governments should promote the usage of internet in all sectors to guarantee having reliable data, which will help in having data infrastructure growth. This could be done through the expansion of both wireless and wired infrastructure, including in rural areas and in rural and remote areas, and consider IoT needs for both licensed and unlicensed spectrum use, barriers to data center development and user data systems for IoT data analysis. Also, governments should review their existing internet infrastructure in light of the potential increased data communications needed for IoT devices. Governments cannot walk alone without collaborative multi-stakeholder approach to IoT policy discussions. IoT is a challenging area for policymakers as it is a rapidly developing environment and its technology spans many industries and uses. A collaborative governance approach, one that draws on the expertise and engagement of a wide range of stakeholders, will be needed to develop effective and appropriate solutions. Policies should aim to promote users' ability to connect, speak, innovate, share, choose, and trust in a manner that both promotes innovation and enables user rights. The necessity of having IoT education and awareness programs for developing skills tailored for each sector for better performance and having outstanding outputs. Finally, I would like to highlight on the tremendous benefits that we can gain from the expansion of using Internet of Things in all economic, social, cultural, environmental aspects, aligned with the necessity of addressing the rising challenges from this technology. Future policy initiatives should be user-oriented, market-driven, and needed to enhance privacy and end users, security, and fair competition. In the end, I would like to thank all the speakers who accepted our invitation to participate in IDSC workshop. I believe they will have a valuable contribution. I would like also to thank the World Food Programme for partnering with the government of Egypt and IDSC in adopting many initiatives in various fields, including our partnership in organizing this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farag, for the introduction of this workshop about Internet of Things and its importance on our daily life in the different fields of healthcare, smart cars, smart cities, and others. Also, speaking about the Egyptian adoption of the ICT for the easy access of its community to the different governmental services and the role of IDSC with the support of the government, especially on the portal to facilitate the communication between the citizens and the decision makers. Also, find at the end for her recommendations and remarks regarding IoT on the different fields. Next, I would like to invite our panelist, Ms. Dr. Huda Dahroug. Before, I would like to invite our panelists to limit their intervention to 5 minutes in order to meet our allocated workshop timing. Dr. Huda Dahroug, acting head of the Central Division for Community Development, Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, member of the Presidential Advisory Council for Community Development. Please, Doctor, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. I'm pleased to be here in IGF 2017 to go through quickly to the main topic. Here I will show you a model of best practice of the e-health intervention using smart solutions. The current situation of health sector in Egypt to start our initiative. Next, please. When we see this data or the statisticals, we find that Egypt, like many other countries, had the red zone of the ratio between the physician and the population, because Egypt, one of the high population numbers. So, next please. This ratio is not the same in all governorates, which means that the healthcare facilities not equally distributed for all governorates in Egypt, because the healthcare in general is centralized in the cities and the capital, so there is a lack of healthcare services in the rural areas and remote areas. Next, please. Which led to that the physicians itself and the new fresh graduate, when they accepting working in the remote areas, they not found in continuous educational process and path. They not found healthcare services, so there a lot of turnover of GP in general practitioner in rural areas. Next, please. Which impact on that patient itself doesn't find the real healthcare services. They have to have more efforts and more cost to go to the nearest hospital near. Next, please. So how we start our telemedicine? The decision was, next, please, we have to reach the unreached. We have to start for the far oasis in Egypt that is 900 kilometers from the capital. Next, please. We started in Siwa in 2008 by a minimal viable solution. We didn't concentrate on the high-tech solution in that time, because we need to test the workable model and the business model on the priority level. Next. Click on the video, please. When we go Siwa and tested the model, yes, in the black area. Click on the black area. Okay. Siwa, yes.
لي ابني له 8 شهور ويعاني مشكلة في القلب، فكنت أخذه وأعرضه إلى الأطباء في الإسكندرية ومرسى مطروح.
مشروع الكشف عن بعد وفر لنا الوقت والمال وبعد المسافة.
The people in Siwa was concerning about their daughters and sons. It was a great challenge to go very far and get the treatments for them. So when we test the model in Siwa, we find that there is a big impact on the people there. So we decided to scaling up the model to the south of Egypt, the upper Egypt, to Nuba. Nuba is 1,100 kilometers far from the capital. Next, please. So the initiative, it was concentrating on giving a healthcare service quality in the remote area specific with a sustainable and affordable initiative. Objective is using the ICT and leverage the ICT as a tools to be a part and contributing in the healthcare services in Egypt, and give a continuous education to the general practitioner there and get the satisfaction of the patient. This will done with integrated and comprehensive approach. We have to give a telemedicine to the patient, a tele-education to the physicians and doctors there in the rural areas, and a good telecom awareness for the community itself. It's not easy to change the mindset of the community to have a treatment on teleconsultation and two computers speak to each other. It's not easy that, but we have to change the mindset and get the community's engagement by giving awareness, get the interest, and get the trust to generate and collaborate together, because the main partner in this model, it was the community itself. Next, please. So the business model was create a virtual clinical healthcare in the remote areas and a big data center cloud computing. We are the IT technical who care about this data center and engage the healthcare providers to get the teleconsultation for remote areas. So many remote clinic and many healthcare providers. It's based on the cloud computing with a low-cost solution, and this is a real photo from the real clinic, remote clinic in Siwa and Noba and Wadi Jadid and many now. This will not be happen and succeeded without inclusive all the multi-stakeholders partnership from the higher education academia, and I'm proud that Asr Al Aini is Cairo University medicine in Egypt was dedicated a room and a schedule of doctors to be a consultant, weekly consultation to the remote area clinics, our remote areas clinics. Civil society was one of the other remote areas clinic there, and the private sector give us telemed company is one of the private sector that give us the solution, software solution, and many companies give us the infrastructures and sponsorship. So now we're becoming, we are the government, MCIT, but we need to involve the Ministry of Health in this initiative, and it's becoming now real to be scaled. Next, please. Yes, go to Noba. This is a real session.
رفع لحضرتك حالة عم أحمد صالح 63 سنة على نظام التشخيص عن بعد. عم أحمد ده حالته جاي من أسبوعين بيشتكي من شكوى دي.
This is real session with Magdi Yaoub Foundation in Egypt in Aswan.
احنا محتاجين ان احنا نطمن على الهارت by all means. فهو he is indicated ان احنا نعمل له ايكو. لكن احنا المشكلة حاليا عندنا هي
فمنظومة التشخيص عن بعد دي بتوفر لي أكبر عدد من التخصصات الناقصة اللي موجودة في المناطق.
Now the solution is more and more upgrading to high-tech and latest technological solutions. All the peripherals, medicine peripherals are now connected, and we're still in process of developing and enhancing the solution to be a good and real and up-to-date technological solution. When we saw the return of investment in this initiative, we find on every partner there is a win situation for the remote areas, more healthcare providers and consultation. It's proved now and tested from Al Qasr Al Aini and Magdi Yaoub Foundation. It's a sustainable business model from the side of patient time and cost saving. It's now becoming good and clear. And the physicians themselves, the general practitioners themselves, find a win situation of getting in contact with the specialist and the famous specialist in Egypt, get them more satisfied in their education path. Next, please. So what the next? The next, the big data. How to collect all this data and to give it to the decision maker in Egypt, Ministry of Health, the decision making, the medical and healthcare map, which priorities and which places we have to attack first or tackle first. This is, I think, the good step and the good next step to be there. I'm proud that and we are proud that the ministry have awarded on and recognized on the national level by the patients themselves, get satisfied by the multi-stakeholders, and international recognition by many awards taken. And finally, we have published an article about our solution in one of the famous International Society for Telemedicine and Health in April 2017. And the big success is our Minister of Health in Egypt last month get interested in the solution and by himself consulted our nodes in Egypt. This means next step of scaling up the solution every way and national initiative. Next. Thank you very much, and I hope that I'm finished in time.
Thank you, Dr. Dahrouk, for the presentation about the health sector in Egypt and your experience in this field, especially in the regional areas, and the role of telemedicine to give health care for those in those remote areas. Using an integrated and comprehensive approach, facing many challenging factors, primarily community engagement, using this telemedicine business model with an inclusive of the multi-stakeholder partnership, and finally, the recognition of the government for your job well done. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Jimson Olivier, Chair of AFICTA. He is Chair of AFICTA and has more than 25 years of experience in the national, regional, and global ICT industries. He is a strategic thinker, analyst, and a multitasking development specialist focusing on people, process, and technology. He is passionate about the use of technology to transform life, create wealth, and accelerate development in Nigeria and generally in Africa. He is the CEO of Contemporary, a leading ICT solution company based in Nigeria. Please, Doctor, the floor is yours.
Distinguished Chair, members of the panel, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is, again, Jimson Olivier. It's a great pleasure to be on this panel. I want to thank the government of Egypt for organizing this very, very relevant panel, because today we're talking about IoT. I'll be speaking on the topic, addressing the risk challenge of Internet of Things. Addressing the risk challenge of Internet of Things. We do know that today, about 12 billion Internet of Things devices are connected. And it's projected by 2020, the figure will rise to more than 35 billion. Access to Internet has made living conditions better over time. And as such, decision makers have continued to rely on IoT devices and smart solutions to enhance decision-making process in the area of health management, as we just heard, transportation, communication, security management, home management, office management, sustainable development, governance, accounting, payment, auditing, et cetera, et cetera. And critical to Internet of Things benefit realization is the issue of associated security risk, which, if not properly addressed, could cause the loss of private data, access, money, reputation, business, and even life. My day job is connected to this, and I see a lot of footprint of DDoS attacks. I want to present this case. Many high-level distributed denial of service attacks that the DDoS witnessed in recent times have prompted strong focus on the security of IoT devices. In the attack on Dyn, over 1 million devices were involved, for which 96% were IoT devices. The devices were compromised and turned into Thimbots. Thimbots are botnets of infected IoT devices that can be used to launch attacks. A lot of administration, like the Food and Drug Administration in the US, issued safety advice for cardiac devices over hacking threat. And St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital patched vulnerability medical IoT devices. In recent times, hackers have demonstrated a wireless attack on the Tesla Model S automobile. Researchers hacked the Vizio Smart TVs to access a home network. Therefore, the need to address Internet of Things device security at various levels, hardware and software, government and enterprise, consumers and services, cannot be overemphasized. Indeed, the primary issue is with Internet of Things hardware, the hardware part right now, which is manufactured without any form of regulation. Regulation is seriously required in this regard. The retail industry has been the leading adopter of IoT technology for obvious reasons. because it connects directly to numerous customer base. Unlike the health care sector, which does not have benefits that are transparent immediately to the end users, but has the higher risk. Again, the need for IoT security cannot be overemphasized. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, when we consider many cases of missed security opportunities occurring during IoT installation and post-installation configuration, you will find, for example, many devices have installed and left unhardened with device user ID and passcode, which are well known in the industry. So IoT security needs to be implemented holistically, and it requires understanding of IoT ecosystem, standards, frameworks, and regulatory proposals that have developed recently. As I said, the IoT ecosystem is underpinned by information security consideration over cloud computing and analytics process environment. It encapsulates the hardware manufacture stage, that is the chip and device, with embedded firmware, the software, connectivity, that is communication, platform and integration, which has to do with services. Talking about IoT standard and framework development, and I want to recommend that out of here, we should be looking at the standard and regulation going forward. One of the positive outcomes of the DDoS attack was the US Department of Homeland Security's release in 2016 of principles and guidelines for securing IoT. These guidelines are not legally mandatory, but are definitely a sign of good start toward IoT device security. Some of these guidelines, though known to most of us in the industry, are: one, leverage security from feasibility stage, apply security updates, patches, and vulnerability management, follow proven security practices, prioritize controls based on the magnitude or impact, provide oversight and proper governance of the IoT, and lastly, plug in the device off network if there is no absolute business need. Once you turn off the network, then you are safe, but you have to be connected to have impact in what you want to do. The Industrial Internet Consortium, primarily comprised of IoT-related enterprises, rolled out the Industry Internet Security Framework, which outlines best practices to assist developers and end users with gauging IoT risk and possibly defending against the risk. Also, the non-profit Internet of Things Security Foundation support all IoT manufacturers, vendors, and end users to help secure IoT devices. Notwithstanding, the best countermeasure to combat the hardware vulnerability is to regulate the process of manufacturing an IoT device so that manufacturers of IoT devices can be accountable for not adhering to appropriate IoT regulatory standards, industry standard, or guidelines. As a baseline, you can even ask when you're deploying IoT devices, what are the security embedded on these things? Maybe you need to change some initial passcodes and what have you. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I will conclude by saying decision makers, indeed, that are increasingly becoming more reliant on IoT need to enhance the process via security. This is good as optimal decisions are always made when all necessary data and information are available. However, the challenge of risk to IoT is high at this point at the hardware and software level, thereby necessitating calls for regulation and for enterprises to take holistic security measures based on existing IoT devices and the future ones to be deployed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Olifio, for your presentation about the security risks that arise with the evolution of the connected devices in IoT in the different fields, and about the presentation of different cases of attacks and security vulnerabilities in the absence of well-defined regulations to tackle these issues, and the effort of the different organizations on this matter. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Adel Suleiman. He is the Senior Policy Officer at the African Union. Mr. Adel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Next slide, please. My slide is a bit longer because I want to include some picture to make the thing interesting. So just to give an idea what is all IT is all about, it's just pretty much about sensor in terms of technology, sensor, and then we have connectivity. for the purpose of improving our livelihood and processes, like business processes and other processes. You know, sensors are needed because we need to connect things. In order to connect things, we need to, you know, to have sensors. As I said, connectivity is important when we talk about IoT. We need to connect, you know, things, homes, villages, cities, even our bodies to monitor, you know, our, you know, hearts, beats, and all kind of things we need to connect. And for the smart application we need, because we need to have a smart home, smart transport, smart health, as the first presentation was talking about, smart building and smart cities. Also, there was discussed the number of connections that we have today, and in the future we're talking about billion of connections that we need for IoT. The economic value, we are talking about 180 billion in 2014, and we're looking at 1 trillion in 2020. Before, 25 years ago, it's all about, you know, technology and development fueled by human interventions. Now we need to connect things so that we automate things. So this is all about Internet of Things. Can you move next slide, please? Next slide. Next. Yes. So IoT will change our life in terms of, you know, i-consumers, i-homes, i-cities, i-commerce, i-ecosystem, i-enterprise. Next, please, next. The value generated by IoT is cross-cutting in terms of power grids, oil and gas, healthcare, commercial aviations, and rail transportation. Next. I think this is the key thing that I want to, from the African Union perspective, from a continental view. For Africa, I think we are experiencing the force in the industrial revolution. And Africa should and must take advantage of this revolution to transform itself and catch up to the rest of the world in terms of e-governance, e-health, e-education, e-agriculture, e-commerce, and so forth. And if we miss the train, I think we were going to miss this fourth revolution as we did in the industrial revolution. So as African, I think we need to transform our, you know, our economies using ICTs. So as we said, everything is going to be connected. We need IoT to improve our livelihood and also business processes. Africa must adopt policies to promote IoT and addressing local needs and solving local problems. I think the key message here that we are not using IoT because it's cool and then it's we need to solve real problems, real African problems. And the stuff that work in the developed nation may not work for Africa. So we need to look at our problems and address them through IoTs. And when it comes to infrastructure, I think we have to take two approaches, the bottom-up and top-down. Communities, everybody in the community should invest in infrastructures because it's going to be self-sustained. Government also should be able to be involved in infrastructure, but as well as communities, as well as farmers, doctors, they should invest. On the policy aspect of IoT, you know, before we look at ICT as a sector, now we need to look at ICT as a cross-cutting. It's not like one thing that we have to address in terms of ICT as a sector. So ICT in peace and security, ICT in health, ICT in all other sectors. So that we, in Africa, when ICT is looked at alone, usually politicians, they would not allocate budget for ICT. But if it is embedded in all across development sectors, then we have a chance that you know, ICT is going to be looked at seriously within Africa. As I said, I will repeat, I think IoT must be used to solve local problems. I personally, for instance, I'm going to adopt certain aspects of IoT, but I'm going to leave other aspects of IT. I'm expecting also countries to do that. It's not like you have to take everything. You take the thing that is going to be applicable in your local circumstances. One of the issues that we face in Africa is the lack of political will. So then if we consider ICT as a cross-cutting sector, then this is going to help a lot because it's going to be, all the policy decision is going to be based on data. So we have data, we can prove the policy recommendations through our data. For each revolution, for every revolution, we need leaders, we need champions. So Africa, I think, must also embrace the leaders in ICT. I think we applaud Egypt for this opportunity. I think they are doing great things. Also, Kenya is doing great things. South Africa is doing great things in IoT. All the leaders, we need to kind of embrace, because revolution require leaders. And we need to make sure that they are empowered. Within Africa also, we need to make sure that, you know, pocket of excellence, we need to leverage all this pocket of excellence, because it's important, you know, we just need to replicate the successes and learn from the experience of different African countries. As my colleague here said, that cybersecurity would be an issue, a huge issue on IoT. Imagine today we are facing with a great deal of issues, you know, pertaining to cybersecurity. Imagine when we introduce IoT in our daily life. So imagine the volume of the risk we are going to face. And I think this issue of cybersecurity, we need to make sure that it's a we take a multi-stakeholder approach when we are dealing with cybersecurity, because not a single entity is going to be able to solve the cybersecurity issues. The business community, technical community, government, they need to sit on the table on a continuous basis to look at the cybersecurity, because it's a make or break for IoT. And of course, on the technical side, we need to embrace IPv6, because with IPv4, you cannot do IoT. I think with that, I thank you, and I yield back to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sulaiman, for the presentation of IoT networks and architecture and the different applications and how IoT will change our life and the value generating and the opportunities generated by IoT and the involvement of all the communities for the development of IoT, especially in the African region. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Ziad Abdel Tawab, Head of the Communication Sector at IDSC. The floor is yours, Mr. Said. Mr. Tawab. Sorry.
Good afternoon. As we all know, IoT is simply about E to E. Everything is connected to everything all the time. This gives machines the ability to communicate with each other, exchange data, and analyze it. And analysis is the core of the DSS process, of the decision-making process. So we might have a future where machines communicate and decide, and we just sit back and relax. Until then, IoT will still be a concept that has many challenges. Many think that IoT is the future, and others think it will be applied on a limited scale. Challenges include, as my colleagues said, security, privacy, data flow, level of decision making, and where decisions should be done, especially in cases of emergencies, crisis management, whether the IoT device will take the decision on site or data will be transferred to a remote data center where processing will be done, and then give back a command to do some action. But definitely collecting these large volumes of data will help in doing the proper modeling and DSS studies and reports that will help governments, private sector, as well as NGO decision makers. Especially in countries and areas where information is hard to get, smart solutions, smart cities, smart buildings is being built and applied in Egypt now, and starting to have the data for emergencies, crisis management, early warning systems, and other developmental issues and the planning. Planning to meet Egypt's Vision 2030, but we still need more focus on both cybersecurity and governance, organizing elements of different sectors, so the multi-stakeholder approach will drive the success of IoT and vice versa. Thank you.
Time is over.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Abdel Tawab, for your presentation about the data generated from IoT networks and how to manage and manipulate these data and the different concerned parties. Next, I would like to invite Engineer Mohammed Saeed. He's the head of software division at Ittisal NGO. Mr. Saeed, the floor is yours.
Good morning. I'm here to speak on behalf of Ittisal NGO. Ittisal NGO is a unified civil society organization in Egypt, gathering 600 companies working in the IT. It is divided into 6 divisions. When it comes to IoT, what attracted us to IoT is the collaboration between the different divisions in Ittisal. IoT application has an electronic part, communication part, software part. That means a collaboration between the members of Ittisal from different divisions. What attracted us to IoT also is the diverse applications of IoT in different sectors. In healthcare, we have too many applications of IoT in healthcare. We have a lot of wearables. They are applied for aged people, for pregnant, for following up the indicators of people need to real-time follow-up. It's available for agriculture, for energy management, for defense. That led us to go for many initiatives for IoT in Egypt. Ittisal has launched an initiative for IoT in 2017, which started with an event for awareness about IoT. We gathered a lot of technical companies working in different areas. We gathered consumers from different sectors, and we had IoT Day in November 2016. Then we provided mini courses on different levels, top management, middle management, and to developers. We have several companies travel to IoT World in Ireland. This is a part of our initiative for IoT in 2017. As a result, we have more than 15 companies started to work in the field of IoT. That's for our initiative in 2017. Again, we have in Etisal IBNI Incubator, which incubated 10 new companies in the field of IoT in 2017. We have repeated our effort again, and we are starting another initiative for IoT in 2018. We are launching our initiative now, and we are ready to incubate 20 companies working in IoT in our program Innovity. And IBNI also is ready to incubate more 10 companies more for 2018, also in IoT. When it comes to IoT, you should be ready to receive a flood of innovative ideas and a lot of applications in different sectors. We are also gathering activities in IoT for in different events. We have event in IoT in November 2016 IoT Day, which will be repeated in July 2018, the second IoT Day. The last week, we have also the Global IoT Conference in Burj Al Arab Innovation Cluster, which is a 3-day conference on IoT. Etisal considers it will make a good introduction to IoT in Egypt. We are working to introduce Egypt as a hub for IoT in the area. We are intending to introduce Industry 4.0 in collaboration with German partners to the IT sector in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Said, for your presentation of Etisal and your interest in IoT on the different applications you introduced, especially on IoT networks from wearable devices, agriculture devices, energy management, and others. And the initiative on the IoT awareness in Egypt on the different level of the community. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Ala Zuhairi, Government Partnership Officer and Geospatial Platform Focal Point, WFE Egypt. Ms. Ala, the floor is yours, but please try to limit your time because we are running out of time. Thank you.
Fine, okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me introduce myself again. My name is Ala Zuhairi. I'm working with World Food Program, Egypt Country Office, as a partnership. As a partnership officer. It's my pleasure to be here as a part from Egyptian delegation and representation for IGSC, and thank you for the IGSC for organizing such workshop. We are here because we are, as a WFP, working with the IGSC as one of our most strategic partner working in Egypt. World Food Program, United Nations World Food Program, over the years has been delivering food assistance to those need in more than 80 countries, with massive amount of food, goods, and service being brought on, moved, and delivered every day. Since 1969, WFP has started working on Egypt, supporting government of Egypt mainly in school feeding program. Now, WFP is reaching more than 2 million public primary school students as a part of national school feeding programs, and also supporting more than 100 community school students, 100,000 community school students with fortified in-school snack and conditional take-home rations to their families. These assets target those most in need and located in most vulnerable area in our countries. Our activity also include close partnership with different government stakeholders, such as our work and partnership with Ministry of Agriculture and Land Reclamation, where we has also supported more than 700,000 smallholders in Upper Egypt to enhance their livelihood and build their resilience against climate shock. In that regard also, we also supported the IT rules. The IT rules under the climate change activity is using IT to provide early warning system or early warning tools to farmers to reduce crop losses in cases of extreme weather event through developing an online tool developing in-house by CO, which give us 5 days weather forecast. I will try to talk about this. In line with this session, I would like to emphasize that how our government counterparts are actively invest in knowledge generation and technology innovations for comprehensive evidence-based policy making. In this regard, WFP is providing technical support and capacity development for evidence-based policy analysis and decision making, such as GeoPortal and Geospatial Knowledge Platform that we are working with the Central Agency for Public Mobilization and Statistics in our country, CAPMAS, and also with developing another one for Ministry of Social Solidarity. The information working also very close with the Information Decision Support Center, the IGSC, in developing Geospatial Portal, but in their mandate within the crisis and crisis management. In line with the UN policies and procedures, we at the WFP are committed to continue working with our government counterparts towards achieving the Support Egypt Vision 2030 as outlined by His Excellency Mr. Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. We are also committed to engage in achieving the Sustainable Development Strategy, paving the way for achieving SDG 2, which is the central mandate to WFP of achieving zero hunger. Another target that we are as a WFP working with is aligning with the SDG 17, which is building global partnership. WFP support is articulated around national development priorities, demand, critical needs, and available resources. And given that the government of Egypt now is investing in knowledge generation, technology, innovations, WFP provides the support to strategic counterparts, as I mentioned, regarding the establishing for GeoPortal, which now is the main gate for the census results, the first automated results in Egypt, with MOS, with IGSC, and now we are extended this to Ministry of Supply and Ministry of Education. As a new initiative, I would like to close by introducing our Community Hub initiative. Community Hub is community schools that we would like the WFP utilize the WFP platform for school feeding, which reaches thousands of community schools across the countries to enhance the impact of WFP intervention and the achievement of development activities. The idea entails that equip these schools with needed infrastructure regarding tablets, smart boards, solar panels, etc., as well as providing comprehensive set of electronic tools to allow teachers to enhance the quality of education provided, as well as act as a knowledge hub to different services in these local communities. By that, I would like to thank you all for your hearing and thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zuhairi, for your presentation about the World Food Programme and your effort for the Egyptian community, your contribution to the agriculture and geopolitical and geospatial services in Egypt, and finally, for your initiative for schools and educations. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Atif Shibrawi, CEO, founder of Social Innovation Expert. Please, if you can limit your intervention for 2 minutes because our limit, the time is finished.
Okay. Good afternoon. I can say good afternoon. I'm sorry, I'm last one. I have to be quick. I guess that speaking about the link between, I supposed to speak about the link between SDGs and IoT, and I guess this is very exciting subject which merits kind of longer. I did a little larger presentation for giving a site for both directions. In fact, SDG was launched in September 2015 as a first ever international or global agreement between 193 countries who agreed to have a global agenda which composes everything we can imagine. It's about 17 goals, 169 targets, and 231 indicators which we can consider as a global agenda for development for the next 15 years. The good news that the IoT is should have longer lifetime than the SDGs, which has already 15 years. IoT comes, in fact, as a tremendous amount of fresh air for the achievement of SDGs. I have only 1 minute to deliver 3 messages, in fact, quickly. The first message regarding the SDGs. I guess that SDGs is to be considered currently as a worldwide platform for development. It engages 4.5 trillion US dollar annual, so it's a huge amount of investment annual for achieving within 15 years. It provides a huge opportunity for all kind of businesses, NGOs, governmental, and we are all over the world. Currently, all governments are working hard now on this time to deliver kind of strategic plan, so we are in the time, so you have to think sustainable. The second message regarding IoT, I guess IoT is a tremendous strategic tool in our hands. I guess that's what IoT is giving us as enable for providing the tremendous amount of solution, as our colleagues mentioning regarding the challenges we are facing by the SDGs. And the third message will be the innovation. So we have to think about the innovation as the only way to link the achievement of SDGs and the opportunities offered for the IoT. I think that if we look for what we have outside of this room, we'll find that plenty of ideas are already in an early stage, and we have plenty of people worldwide are thinking. So my message is think, innovate, and we need more innovation funds, more innovation program, more accelerator and incubator. But we have also to think about being impactful in our innovation. So last message will be innovate and use IoT for impacting the world. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Shebrawi, for your presentation. I will wrap in 2 seconds because we are out of time. We have tackled many different aspects of IoT networks, which are involving on the different fields and sectors, and the amount of data generated from these networks. Many challenges that are arising, most important are security. Thank you for your presence, and I would like to wish the organizers of this governance forum a good continuations and good luck. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't have a card. I will send you an email. Inshallah. Inshallah.
But انت was very quick. انت بتقري وبتقولي الاثنين مع بعض.
كنت بقرا وبزود.
لا اصل القرايه فقط ممله. خلي الناس
لا انا كاتبه مين بوينت.
لا انا عارف حتى لو الموضوع صعب.
Sorry for. We have many finalists.
If you like, I mean, I want to make sure that tomorrow really بس انا عملت لك هظبطها لان هم لما قالوا انا اخدت لاست تايم لا خلاص ما تحلي بس هناك شويه.
Hi, how are you? Thank you. Thank you.
They are the ones who are problems, our partners.
We are our purpose. She is my sister.
Probably.
عشان they deserve, but at the same time I was in camera.
And was coming with me also to understand the head of
Let's see, I don't recall. Sorry, I don't have.
Hey, Hadiz, how are you doing? Well done. I'll give you this.
One was an email, so I can.
أنا عندي. You are working in one organization. Which organization?
I'm working for the Ministry of Telecommunication and Future.
AGF.
Thank you.
I have no,
Time
okay.
for questions.
There are
This is
no
my
questions, so it's okay. There were no questions, so it's okay.
Even for the floor, I didn't have time to give them time. Yes.
دي شركة أنا مسويها في البحرين. أنا I'm living in Bahrain. ودي شركة مع اليو ان دي بي I'm responsible for SDGs and RD systems. أنا ال SDG senior expert مع If you have any relevant thing for SDG, let me know. تحت أمرك. مع السلامة.
Thank you.
You have a box. What is your message?
This is French. This is my message.
Okay. You have to put your message on the internet or mobile application or thing like this.
Yeah, that's right. I told you. Wait a second. It should be here.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes, we are about to start, and we are wondering if it is fine with you if we move from the podium that is a little bit maybe too formal for us and gather around a table with you all. Is that all right? Are your mics all working? I'm sure yes, so we can go ahead. Yes.
Did I give you a card?
Yes.
I did. Okay. All right.
So we're moving to the table?
Yeah, we can.
So we're moving. Okay. All right.
All right.
È già finito?
Finito.
Ai ai ai, la
Now
sessione.
we're going to move formally around the table. I think it's special. So, hello, hi everybody. We're here with the Dynamic Coalition of Public Access. I'm Esmeralda Moscatelli from IFLA, the International Federation of Library Association, and we have here a heterogeneous panel that is going to discuss modalities and example of public access throughout the world, and because it's very informal and very small, and we would like for you to participate and ask questions or make remarks and as we go along. So I have here with me on Maria Garrido from TASHA, researchers from the Technology and Social Change from the University of Washington. And she will be talking about the development access to information, which has been released this year, and the role and the function of public access within the report. Then I have Janet Sawaya from IFL that has a wide experience. Hello again. So I have Janet. Thank you. I have Janet.
But it's not working.
Yes, it's working.
All right. That's one of the barriers. Okay, here we are, the third microphone. Then we're trying to connect with David Ordóñez, who's a leader at IFLA, and he's from Colombia, and he will provide a fresh approach to the idea of the concept of public access in Latin America. And then we have Winston Roberts, which is currently senior advisor of the National Library of New Zealand, and he has a mixed, he worked for IFLA for many, many years in the past, and he has both experience in national and public libraries, and is here to give us a perspective from that part of the world. And then my colleague over there, Stephen Weiber from IFLA, is trying to connect David. So I think I would start with Maria, and then
before you start, because we're such a small group, I don't
Yes.
see many faces from last year. I'm just wondering if people can briefly go around and introduce themselves and give us a little bit of information about why you're interested in this, in particular because this, obviously, this intersection on internet governance and libraries isn't a big world, and so it'd be interesting to know what others' interests are in the topic.
Okay. Hello, good morning. My name is actually good afternoon. My name is Karel Douglas. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. My interest here is I'm on the board of directors of the National Library System in Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm actually here for other reasons, but I did see this session and I thought it would be very useful to come and hear what's happening since it does impact on my work as a board member. Thank you.
Do you want to, sorry, just to go?
Hello everyone, my name is Carlos Rey Moreno. I work for the Association for Progressive Communications and I'm here to try to understand, well, I'm coordinating a program in community networks and local access, and I would like to explore a bit more the potential of public libraries as the starting point of a community network or a local access initiative in the Global South. Thank you.
Boris Engelson, I am someone who disagrees with anyone and on anything, even before I hear what you say, especially within the UN system, because I know more or less in advance what people will advocate. I'm surprised that I have to introduce me again, because this very morning we had an in-depth and comprehensive discussion encompassing all aspects of library activities vis-à-vis the internet from 10:58 to 10:59 this morning with Esmeralda, so I thought that we had exhausted the topic. Why I'm interested is because for me, and maybe I am a little bit silly, I thought that the internet, the web, basically was a library issue. And in the past 30 years, I have always hoped that one day it will be addressed as a library issue. And each time I see this, what you call mirage, this illusion, that maybe this will be the great discussion about semantics and the universal cataloging, or I mean the ultimate library implemented by the net. The net is just the implementation. I run across the world and try to see if the miracle will occur.
I am Ruth Wenger, and I am a Swiss librarian, and I am here just for interest.
Francisco Rocha from Portugal. I am part of a group called Copy Fighters. We are a group of young people who work on the topic of copyright, and we are part of the generation who was born with access to the biggest library ever, the internet, and that's why I'm here.
Hello, my name is Maxime Zeller. I'm also part of the Copy Fighters group. I'm from France. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shin Takamura. I'm from Japanese government of ICT, and I interest impact that internet growth to public access. So I want to start to study today. So I join this session. Thank you.
My name is Jean. I'm librarian, and I'm part of CGI steering committee, the team of a technical advisory team, and I'm here just to hear it follow the discussion.
I'm Jan Hopmans, also with the Copy Fighters from the Netherlands. I'm here because I'm generally interested in open knowledge and access to information, just like a previous colleague of mine said. Yeah, we have the biggest library in the world that's accessible, and we're really worried about the impact that copyright is going to have on the internet.
Hello, my name is Silvia. I am also part of a young movement of copyfighters, and I am interested more particularly in digital collections of museums, archives, libraries, and galleries, and their public domain status and availability for creative reuse for creators. So basically, in education and increasing the awareness of how to find such content.
Afternoon. My name is Andreas Lamini. I come from Swaziland. I work in the Ministry of ICT, so I want to get ideas in terms of how to use libraries to bring more access to the communities.
Hi, I'm Maylin Fang from the People-Centered Internet, and I'm also Vice Chair for Internet Inclusion for the IEEE, and I'm very interested in public access and the role that libraries can play.
Okay, so do you want to say something very quickly? Do you want to introduce yourself and then we can start? Not really. Okay, perfect. So. So we'll start with Maria Garrido from Tasha, and then I would say maybe each speaker would have a maximum time of 10 minutes, really, maximum, or less. And yeah. So let's start with Maria.
Thank you very much. So I'm a researcher at the University of Washington, and this year we started a project. As you all know, the access. Oh, do I need to use this, or can I? Yeah. I'm a short person, and I'm like feel like this over the table. This is weird. Sorry. Yeah. See. It's on. Okay. As you all know, the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. It's the first time where public access to information actually is codified in one of the targets, and it's target 16.10. So it's not the only target where information is mentioned as an important conduit to achieve the goals. There's 14 other targets where information is specifically called out. So within the context of the UN 2030 agenda, we wanted to understand and assess the extent to which access to information, and I'll define access to information the way we define it here, can promote and help advance those targets, and the role of public libraries and libraries in general, public libraries specifically, in helping advance those goals. As I'm preaching to the choir, but libraries in many countries of the world play a very important role in different aspects that specifically are relevant to the SDGs. So I guess we started this project asking, well, can access to information really create more socially inclusive societies? I'm sorry, I'm giving you my back. No, I don't care. I just don't know how to coordinate microphone and people. And if so, like you said, working your generation, right, given the unprecedented ability we have today to share, to create, to exchange, is it possible to create a more inclusive society, better opportunity for young people, better opportunity for women and other people that perhaps do not have the same chances that others have, and sponsor civic life in our communities? For us, access to information is the rights and capacity to use, create, and share information in ways that are relevant for people's in everyday lives, right? So there are many ways in which information is minimal, and when I say information, I don't mean just the access to information. It's the technology, the social context, the legal aspect that you guys pointed out when you introduced yourselves, and so it's from that multidimensional perspective. We selected 17 indicators, and people working in the UN system know there are very few indicators today that can help us understand from a global perspective the role of access to information beyond connectivity. There's very little information on capabilities. There's very little information on the legal aspect. There is very little information on gender statistics, but we work with the indicators available today from 4 different dimensions. 1, the connectivity, which are the most readily available. 2, the capabilities of people. 3, the legal context, and 4, the social context. And it's I feel a little bit out of place trying to convince in this table people why public access to information is critical, because all of you know. But today in the world, we have 80% of the world covered with a 3G network, and only 36% of people in less developed countries are able to access the internet from a connectivity perspective. Forget about knowing how to, or doing things with it, or being able and free to use that to advance their communities and societies. So that's the first step, the first line in support of public access. Two, of course, the gender gap, right? Today, even in countries where you would not expect that gap exists, there's a ginormous gap. Only 85 countries, starting from there, gather data on women and the internet. So what we have today in terms of understanding of, you know, percentage of women and men that use the internet comes from 85 countries in the world, that's it. So the gender divide starts from there in knowing how many women, and it's very, of course, the gender gap is ginormous. It goes, even Turkey has the biggest gender gap, running at almost 20%. We also know that from the very little data available, that young people today in many parts of the world, especially in the global south, are more active using the internet, in social media, are more active taking advantage of online courses for education and employability, and are less participant in political aspects of internet, especially blogs and forums and other civic platforms. And that has to do, of course, not only with the lack of civic engagement from young people in these countries, but from the legal space that perhaps does not allow them to participate without political consequences of repression. And I think I just want to conclude by saying that it is critical for us, and once again, in this table, there's no need for preaching to the choir, but the component of public access to the internet needs to be a key political priority, and they cannot pay only lip service to this area. It's critical to advance access to information from a rights-based perspective, right, where access to information includes economic rights, political rights, human rights. All of them encompass one group of rights that are indivisible. And with that, I'll let for the librarians and library experts in the panel to share their experience.
Yes, I think maybe we can move to Janet, and we'll keep questions at the end, or I think it would be best.
Okay, my name's Janet Sawaya, and I'm from Electronic Information for Libraries. EIFL and IFLA were the founders of this dynamic coalition, and it was founded based on the idea that public libraries are the vehicle for public access to knowledge and information, which is the critical purpose of the internet. And each year we talk about, you know, we come to this and we're trying to convince others that public access is critical, and it's a really challenging issue. And so this year, when we were brainstorming for this session, we said, okay, what do we need to be focusing on? And one of the areas that we really need to be focusing on is not just saying public access is important in order for people to get online, because it is, but also what are the policy issues that need to be addressed in order to make public access available to people. Libraries are important vehicles for public access because they're one of the few institutions that are free and open to the public throughout the world. EIFL works in over 40 countries, and previously I was working at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Global Libraries Initiative, and we worked in dozens and dozens of countries and did research on even more countries. And in that context, we also did research on how and whether there are other places to do public access, and the conclusion generally has been public libraries provide the best environment because of infrastructure, because of trained staff. So what are the policy issues that need to be addressed? Well, and in that context, we have to look at it in two areas. One is in terms of just providing support to public access. And from that perspective, we often talk about universal service funds or other types of vehicles. Government programs, I'm assuming people know what universal service funds are. Briefly, they're a way that the government taxes often through telephone bills or other mechanisms, and then subsidizes, often through an E-rate, a discounted rate for schools, libraries, health institutions, others, discounted rate to the internet, as well as in some countries, providing the technology for public access as well. So there's that aspect of it. How do we actually get the technology out there? And I think because public access is actually on the decrease, this is an issue we need to continue to raise. More and more it becomes a discrepancy between those who have access to some type of device and those who do not, and even more so those who have access to the device on a phone or access on a phone versus those who have some other type of access, because we know that the limits of access on a phone. And it does not allow for full development of access to knowledge and information in the way that access to some other device does. So there's the one part of the policy, which is how do we get people the technology and the internet access that they need? And one critical way is through some type of universal service fund in which the government is helping to subsidize as a public good access to the internet and access to technology. Then the other policy area that I think is critical for us to talk about is the role that public access to knowledge and information plays in all the different development goals that governments have, particularly the SDGs. And so, for example, we're working in, as IFL, we're working in about 10 countries across Africa, and we did a public study in 5 of those, and across the board, the African countries in which we did the study, there was acknowledgement by public officials that access to the internet is critical for them to achieve their policy goals. But yet, rarely is access to information, knowledge, or the internet mentioned as an integral to various policy goals. And so part of our advocacy is to get access to information and the internet mentioned explicitly so that when policies are being implemented, whether it be an education policy, a health policy, an agriculture policy, an economic development policy, that public access, and particularly libraries, are mentioned as critical partners to making those policy goals happen. So I'm trying to make it quick because we were supposed to end, and I'll just leave it there.
So I just for time purposes, do we have the remote participants, Stephen? Do we? Okay, good. Now we go to Winston. Winston.
Thank you, Esmeralda. In view of the comments that people in this micro workshop have made, I can see that there's a strong bias towards younger people, and there's a strong bias towards non-government and civil society academic stakeholders, and not so many people from governments here. And there's also, I get the impression that there's also an expectation that, an impression on the part of everyone in this round table that public access to information in libraries is something that we still have to fight for. That's something that concerns me, and I'll tell you why. Because it's all been said before. I was here in 2003 for the World Summit on the Information Society as a New Zealand government representative, and I spent months during 2003 in all the preparatory committees working up to the outcome documents for the 2003, the first summit. And I personally negotiated and argued for expressions of support for access to information through libraries, and they are all in the Geneva Principles 2003. And I would like to suggest maybe the people at the top desk, could you possibly call up from ITU, Google, the Geneva Principles and quote, put on the screen for us if you could go to ITU.org and the WSIS, the original WSIS, and get Geneva Principles and call up a section of those principles that refer to the action line on access to information. And then while I'm talking, maybe if one of you could do that. If it's not possible, don't worry. What I mean is, at the Geneva Summit, we talked about freedom of expression, freedom of access to information. We referred to Article 19. We debated the need for providing information to populations, and bearing in mind, of course, that in those days there were no such things as smartphones. Smartphones are new inventions that came along since 2003. But we talked about the use of mobile phones in dense urban environments, in remote urban rural communities, in the bush. We talked about the use of mobile phones to leap over problems of fixed line technology and to put information out there to populations. We talked about access to information in public libraries, in schools, in post offices. There's an old word for you. In public access to information in government-funded, community-funded institutions at local grassroots level. All of that was explained, was discussed, debated extensively in the first WSIS, the First World Summit on the Information Society, 2003. It's all there. And the reasons for debating those questions were, alongside internet governance, was that the assembled states parties to the summit, we agreed that the purpose of that summit was to not only discuss internet governance in the technical terms, but also to discuss the reasons for being concerned about why the internet should be well governed. In other words, it should be a platform for putting out honest, clear information, for economic reasons, for educational reasons, for scientific and cultural reasons. And that's why UNESCO, for example, was given responsibility for applying a number of action lines, just as other UN agencies were given devolved responsibility for other action lines. UNESCO had responsibility particularly for the ones relating to access to information and culture. Another reason another important point that I recall from 2003 is that we discussed the importance of bringing indigenous communities or rather, turn it around, giving indigenous communities access to the internet and protecting the expression of indigenous cultures on the internet. That's also an action line in the Geneva Principles. It seems to me, the reason for talking about that at great length is it seems to me that many people now do not know about the Geneva Principles. They happened before the time that you began to take an interest in these questions. They also may have been overlooked by the people in ITU who have gone on developing internet governance since then. But the Working Group on Internet Governance that was officially launched at the Tunis Summit, the second summit, was started off in Geneva 2003. So there's history there, and I don't think we should forget history. In fact, I would urge you to refer back to the principles as the beginning of everything for this whole process, for this debate. Libraries were mentioned in that World Summit document. It's not only about bits and bytes, it's not only about the mechanics of the internet, it's about the social consequences and outcomes of access to information, the reasons why we do it. As who was it from the Internet Society yesterday at the opening? Was it Catherine Brown, was it? Mentioned that the Internet is our life now, and that's absolutely true, and it always was true. All our lives are on the Internet, and that's why we had the World Summits, to talk about how we can organise our lives, how we can defend against hate speech, how we can defend against religious intolerance, how we can extend access to the Internet to deprived communities, indigenous communities, people who are not in the highly industrialised world, so that everyone has a chance to improve their education on the platform which is the Internet, to improve their economic life chances by getting an education on that platform which is the Internet, and then by using the Internet to develop small SMEs, small industries. I'm talking too much, but I think you get the point that it's all been said before, and I think I'd like to encourage you to look back at some of those older texts and remind some of the people in the ITU and other UN agencies that what they're saying is in fact not new. They need to apply what was discussed before.
Thank you, Winston. And let's hear from David. David, are you there? It's not.
Hi, sorry. Well, I am David. I am a Colombian librarian, and thanks for this help to can participate in the dynamic coalition. So I'm going to speak about two cases. What's happening right now in Colombia. The first one is the peace process and the mobile libraries for the peace. Imagine that we were in war for 50 years, 50 years. It means that the half of our country is not discovered yet in an institutional way. The people live in this small village, but the government cannot be part of this process. So after the peace process, we have like a new country for discover. The Ministry of Culture is implementing the mobile libraries for peace. So in 20 towns, like created towns for the people who is reintegrating from the guerrilla, the Colombian guerrilla, to the society, they have the opportunity to access to a mobile library with technology, with laptops, with e-readers, with screens. And this is a big challenge, because imagine that these people that since they were a child, they have only in mind that they have to carry on an arm, a gun or things like that. And now they discover all these diverse world, all these things in digital world. And this is an interesting case because it's happening right now. The people never touch a cell phone or an iPad that maybe it's very common for us. This is the first case. And the other case is the public policies for libraries. We have people, policy makers that I am making laws for everybody. I am working specifically in copyright laws, but the thing is that in this case, the multi-stakeholder is not always something that you have for sure. The librarians, we should took a space here, because not always we are part of this conversation, and this beautiful idea of multi-stakeholder model is not always implemented in all spaces. So we have to find the way to interact with other stakeholders to see what can we do in these negotiations, in the implementations of technology, of policies. And the greatest thing with the libraries is that we are in the core of the society, in the communities. So we have like one part of us in the countryside and one hand of us in the capital, in the big capitals. So the challenges that we are facing is how can we meet the policymakers in the capitals and the people in the jungle that never heard about technology. So we have to think about how can we represent to the people who is never been connected or never had been present physically or never imagined that something what's happening now that I am in kilometers away from where you are sitting right now, this can be possible. And in the other hand, we as librarians can give access to the information. This is particularly challenging in places where there is no infrastructure at all. Imagine that we can give tablets, for example, to the people, but there is no internet connection there, or we don't have digital literacy for see how it works. So, and the thing is that internet is a good access provider for the information, but how can we go a step further for knowledge? Because the information, maybe it's in the books, it's in a CD, on a e-book, but knowledge is in the heart and in the brains of the people. So how can we try to meet these things together? And the other thing is that sometimes in copyright laws we are talking about clients. We are thinking about the people with money, the people who can buy for access to information, who can buy things. But what happened with the people that don't use money because the conditions were different? So, well, I know that I have no time, so that's my perfect presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Just I would ask you to contribute with question or comments, but my personal question to you all is like, so from what we discussed, things were said before, essentially. That's what Winston reminded us. Public access is important, is fundamental. Access to information, another milestone for us to be mindful users, consumer, and co-creators of what happens on the internet. So what is not really, my question is like, what are we doing sort of wrong? Why are we preaching, like to the choir all the time, and we don't move forward in meaningful way, engaging all the actors and essentially I think we are at a place where we don't need to justify or say, oh, public access is important. It's fundamental. It's done. It's a fact. How can we move forward? How can we engage all of you here and others to actually move forward and do something constructive and tangible? It's a little bit of a provocation. Sorry about that.
Okay, I'm not sure my mic is on or off. My name is Bhaskar Bhattacharjee. I am from Bangladesh, and I'm a blind person here representing disability community as a Internet Society IGF ambassador. Friends, when we are talking about the library, when I was a student, I didn't get a single books in accessible format. So libraries is our dream. Just you never ever expect that a visually impaired people can go to a library. And digitalizations can give an opportunity for a person with visual disability to access books and information in alternative format. But unfortunately, the mainstreaming public library are not considering the needs of accessibility at all, I can say, in the developing world. Even though there is a standard like EPUB 3, DAISY, or other standards are available, So how we could deal this challenge to ensure accessible information and book for persons with we call print disability, who are unable to read printed materials. Do you have any solution, or how you will engage the disability community in the, as a collaborative force with library related issues?
Is in the time before the internet, if you didn't have books in Braille, there was no accessibility. With the modern tools, you can have voice books, and that fixed the thing much better. So I'm not sure that this is an issue of non-access. It is, on the contrary, an example of obvious solutions.
May I jump in quickly? It's an important question, and Argentina with Tiflo Libros has a fantastic project which allows people to get access to books, to accessible format books. We have been working very closely with Tiflo Libros, with the World Blind Union, to make sure that the Treaty of Marrakesh, which removes the unnecessary copyright restrictions to access of books, which are increasingly inexplicable given that we can share books so easily online. We're working with them. We are pushing as hard as we can to make sure that member states implement this treaty without imposing additional costs, without imposing bureaucratic barriers, without trying to make things deliberately difficult, in order to make sure that access can be a reality and we can really take advantage of the potential of the internet to give every library with internet access, full access to books that everyone can read.
We encourage you, with or without Marrakesh, to go the right way.
We do, and if the law helps, that's great.
Yes, let somebody else. Otherwise, there is Winston here.
I think you have Pedro.
Oh, Pedro. Oh.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Well, I don't know if for people with full blindness, but I'm aware of a project that maybe is not part of IFLA, but is in Cameroon. It's called the Le Pavillon Blanc. What they are doing is augmenting for people that are, I don't remember now the word, visually impaired? No. The people that have the skin whitish and the albino people that have visual impairments to a greater extent. So they are creating audiobooks and they are creating augmented text for people to go into these mobile libraries to actually access the books. But I don't know what is your background, and I don't know how much do you know of countries like Bangladesh or many other people in Africa or in the global south, where in rural areas there is no libraries, there is no devices where...
Web access.
No, there is not. There is not. There are more than 3 billion people that have not access to the internet.
You know, there was a foundation for the digital gap created in Geneva, and they had to close before they opened because it was a non-issue, and that was 20 years back.
Sorry, sir. I encourage you to come to many of the sessions that there is going to be today, tomorrow.
I also traveled to India. I have lived in Bangladesh. Okay. And, you know, if you are here just to have the voice of officialdom speak, you know, your view of the world is that the UN system, including UNESCO and IFLA, is here, and the real world is that. And I have the opposite view. And so there is no way we can even start the conversation as long as you address people, as you said, we all know that. No, I don't know what you know, and you don't know what I
know. One thing, from my user experience, there is number of digital books, but which are not accessible. Maybe they have converted from the JPG to PDF or something else. So maybe internet is a good help, but there is thousands of digital books which are fully inaccessible. There is international standard for making books accessible, but unfortunately, the public libraries, maximum public libraries, are not following the standard, like DAISY standard or EPUB, etc. So we need to consider the rights of reading rights of persons with visual disability. Even though there is a progress, but still we are behind. Thank you.
Winston, please go ahead.
I suggest we remind our ISOCs in our respective countries and remind our library associations to get the ear of the relevant ministers in our governments and remind those ministers that in the Geneva Principles 2003, it refers to providing effective assistive technologies for access to information. And also one of the outcomes of the First World Summit was a strong recommendation to governments that the internet should be taken full account of in integrated development policies, national and regional development policies. Integrated policies, okay? That means that policies should not only focus on improving GDP, but they should focus on improving education outcomes and improving soft infrastructure and not just cables, but infrastructure in terms of digital skills, listening posts in the bush, school libraries and things like that, for people at a sort of human level, a grassroots level, to learn about these things. But there needs to be integration, and these policies need to be developed by national governments. They are the only ones that can do that.
Sorry, your name again?
My name is Jan Hopmans. I want to make a small comment. I hope it's at least relevant in a bit. It's personally a bit my opinion and a bit of the copyfighters. I wanted to say to Houston, it was Winston, it worries me as well that you're telling me about that about 14, 15 years ago, politicians were already telling about their commitment to the sharing of knowledge and of the understanding of knowledge, and still nothing has happened. What worries me as well is like the internet started to be acceptable or integrated in society 30 years ago, and if you go to panels today and ask us some question, there's even people here that say they don't understand technology, which is maybe a little bit too late, because it's not just my generation, it's even your generation that has grown up with the internet. What I'm really positively surprised a little bit, because I went in here not expecting anything, that libraries are really thinking about the access to knowledge, and I think it's really an interesting process for libraries as well to make people understand the knowledge and showing the knowledge around to people around. And I'm wondering a little bit if maybe that's also a thing that libraries should educate other people, and not maybe the general public, but also the politicians in themselves, making them understand what they're actually talking about. And I'm afraid that when looking at the current reform, that copyright is going on, that it's becoming more and more restrictive, and politicians are restricting the access to information without realizing that they are doing so. And that limits, for example, access to the information on internet through link taxes and content filters that are being implemented right now, but also copyright rules, like the guy over there said, in which makes it impossible to adapt content to different environments, and also countries where the licensing fees may be too high to even considering buying the information in itself. It's not really a question, but I wanted to say that and show our perspective.
Yes, I think before giving you again the floor, I think what Winston was waving at you that Maria talks about is exactly in reports like this that we are trying to shape the mind and the approach to access of politicians. That's what we're trying to do. I mean, it's a long road, but at least it's something that it's worth trying, because I think, I don't know you, but I think when you are in the political spectrum, you have to sort of prove or show what are the benefits rather than what is the process. The process is something that we might design, but a politician might be more interested in what is the outcome of a certain, decision or a certain policy he adopts. So, yeah, if you want to become familiar with this, that would be something we can do. And Maria?
And not talking from as a representative of my university or in the partnership for this project, okay, it's a very personal. I am puzzled that today, 13, 14, 15 years of recognition of the importance of public access, the importance of access to the internet, we're still having the same conversations and even worse, right? So we live today in a world with 60% of the people that have access to the internet lives in countries where they are arrested or persecuted for speaking freely online. So I think your generation faces the biggest challenges, because even though you have all the opportunity and the platform to voice your opinion, I think there's and I don't understand what it is. I think it's a combination of things. The blocks that those voices actually are transformed into political actions. And I'd love to hear from your experience with copy fighters, especially because it's such a critical aspect of public access to information and such a complicated one because of the commercial front of it. In your experience, what do you think is the biggest obstacle that you face in transforming that voice and that level of participation into political action? We face the same problem too, trying to bring in libraries into the development conversation, right? So I'd love to hear from them first, if it's possible, if you guys don't. I mean, from the people in the office, but I point to the young people on that corner. But
like it's been said before, I think it's people don't think it's a big subject, but they don't realize it's very important, and politics don't really understand when we talked. They don't understand how it's working. So how can they vote without with knowing what actually is going to happen? And it feels like they are only listening to commercial lobbyists who want profit and not public access. And we are nothing when we can talk, but we are ignored. So that's a problem.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, and then we can. You've been patient enough.
Freelance journalists are also unheard voices.
Go for it.
Okay, yes. Well, the thing is that we in libraries facilitate the access to the information and the knowledge, but how can we don't think in libraries as just a house, walls and things that happen inside that. How can we make that the understanding of the things can go for policymakers, other civil society actors, or private sector? I mean, the libraries can do that and have the infrastructure for do that, but we need that many actors in many places use this infrastructure.
Okay. Thank you, David, and please.
Yes, basically I have 3 points to make. First, we all know that if you are poor or sick or in jail or whatever, you might have less access to books or music or whatever. This is not the issue here. We are Internet Governance Forum, and in my understanding, the core issue of Internet governance or Internet, just in short, is how do we deal with information in a world which has gone from information poor to information plenty? Of course, access does not mean the same thing when you have instantly 400 million documents or when you are a poor sheepherder in the middle of the Sahara, etc. So this is, to me, the first issue. And it can be translated into more specific issues. For example, should there be a directive of IFLA to make all archives accessible urgently online, or should we wait 50 years, as we are doing now, for academics to make a career on each page of archive? Yes or no, I have no position, but that's one point. What is the future of the Dewey system, the decimal system, whichever classification system in the age of internet? Is the distinction between index, table of content, catalog still relevant, or is it not with Google? Does Google have something to say to IFLA or vice versa, or should IFLA rather speak with Wikipedia, which still has some project of having portals and rational? All these to me are real questions, are the real questions. So the last point, I did also attend with this in 2003. I was one of the few journalists to attend it. Why? In Geneva, which is the core of the UN system, with hundreds of journalists, were there no journalists. I felt strongly, let's say, constrained, uneasy with Article 19. We had Ronald Coven, maybe you remember, who said that the main crucial issue is Article 19. We all know, even Hitler knew, even Idi Amin Dada know that cutting the tongue of journalists is not good for the freedom of information. So this kind of, cliché, like Irina Bokova, whenever you would ask her a question, she would also always talk of the Egyptian woman or things like that, is a way not to address the real issue. The real issue, as I felt them as a lone journalist in 2003, was the power of the media vis-à-vis other actors, vis-à-vis freelancers, vis-à-vis new actors who would like to take avail of that opportunity not to be blocked by the institutional media. I am not going to list you the catalog, but to me, Article 19 was a way to preach the gospel, formal gospel of the system, and silence the voice of those who wanted to address real system. We live a time of disintermediation of all institutions, especially in the field of culture. The media have had to pay the price for that. So, and development and access to information. Development is the goal of humanity for the past 200 years, and all development theories have failed, by the way. Access to information is a religion of the world since Bacon and since Galileo, etc. So this is really, for me, the arch cliché. In theory, it sounds good. We have been trying to implement it for centuries, and all the recipes we advocate usually are the wrong ones and bring to failure. So you understand that a freelancer who is, of course, a bit paranoid and hysterical, because that's the only way to have a voice vis-à-vis all respectable people and institutions, you understand that I disagree with officialdom on nearly every count. And if other journalists may agree with you, they have to come. Unfortunately for you, you are stuck with the only unreasonable one, and I am here, but next time you can ask me to leave the room before the start of the workshop.
Thank you.
And I attended IFLA conference throughout in Lyon for 1 week.
And well, I would never, I would want to thank everybody. I would never ask anybody to leave the room.
Some institutions in Switzerland, official ones, did recently.
I'm sorry to hear that, but I think thank you very much for being here. It was a pleasure to have such a heterogeneous group of people, and we're here if you want to talk to us. And thanks again, and enjoy your lunch.
Finish.
Thanks, David. I will make sure I actually try and kill that French guy. If we find him like
Please, there is no people.
I'll take responsibility. Yeah, no,
Try to find out the jacket.
Thank you. So sorry, I told her I this is not like that. But anyway,
Even our ambassador.
thank you so much for taking part. What I'll do is I will share notes so that you can say this. If that's okay, great. Thank you so much. I hope that the YouTube is working for the rest of the conference.
Did I say
Good.
something?
Okay, that's a start. Perfect.
I never attack anyone. Just say this is the reality. Yeah. I would like to go. I would like to meet some.
Here in the room?
Yeah. So did you check everything I have taken?
No, not,
So you're coming to the room as well tonight? I'm organizing the local access and I just check on July. I think we're on the list. Where is it again? It's called La Romana. It's very close to the CIS.
Perfect. Yeah. Cool.
So I've been talking to Vico Pace, which is doing kind of understanding we can explore ways of it's more about how we can create synergies for, like identify spaces where different actors can
That's why I was sharing that David couldn't make it. So.
No, it was very interesting.
No, exactly. Well, I think, there's the word freelance. Quite similar.
It would be great if I was actually putting in mind if tomorrow we find some time, I don't know if the unit is going to be more conducive environment.
How many people do you have?
It's going out of hand, like, now, we didn't know Maria was here, so Maria got married. No, but this is happening like one after another. So no, maybe a space during the unit, if not, maybe we can just see there is interest going on, that after holidays we should have a Zoom room, we can have a more specific
people are running around.
Yeah, exactly. So tonight is more about people meeting together, and they're saying that Nico started the baby with you last year.
Yeah, no, this is very measuring.
So creating spaces or creativity around this topic can emerge. It's not a particular.
It's perfect. No, I'm really glad. I'm really glad to meet you. Yes. It's mainly Deborah and Henrietta running the APC, so it's good to meet people working elsewhere in the world.
I recently joined.
Oh, good for you. You joined the right side. See you this evening then. Thank you.